headphones off if you can, please. Is this kind of loud? Do you hear me? Or is it okay? Good? Wow, that worked in Miami. That would not work so fast. Oh, shit. Who gives us women away from marriage?
Take my heart
We're here. Deep breath. All right. So, first thing, I wanted to welcome everyone on behalf of Nick and Julie. I wanted to say welcome, and I also want to say bienvenidos. I even want to say aloha to everyone here who come from so many different places. This is a very, very special moment in so many ways. And I think, when people say, hey, this isn't my first rodeo, for the three of us up here, it kind of is our first rodeo. So we're gonna do our best to help each other out as we go along. The very first thing Nick and Julie wanted me to do was to thank all of you for being here, for sharing this beautiful day with them, for really being their support as we led up to this day, for being a support today, and as they know that you'll be a support for them in the years to come. So thank you all very much on their behalf for being here. A very special thanks to 4 people who are here, who did quite a bit, were very responsible in getting us here. To Bill and Nadine, to Carlos and to Anne, thank you for bringing them into this world. Thank you for teaching them right from wrong, for staying up at nights while they were sick, for dishing out advice even if they weren't listening sometimes. thank you very much for doing everything that you have done to bring us to this wonderful moment. So I would like to propose a hand for these four. All right, so I'm calling this Marriage Palooza. There's a lot of events leading up to the main event. There's a lot of activities leading up to the main event, and I'll try and give us a little bit of a preface as to what's going on in each one. But the very first thing I'll ask is that you focus on what we're saying. We're going to be dishing out a lot of words. We're going to be saying some things, doing some things. Understand and focus on what we're saying, because your focus as a family and as friends is very important to the two of them, okay? And actually, I'd like to officially, I think I may have forgotten, this may have come before the focus part, I'd like to officially welcome the two of you, okay? Because somebody has to do that, because you've welcomed everyone else. So in Marriage Palooza, the very first thing that we do is we talk about marriage itself. It's such a beautiful day for a wedding, isn't it? And wedding and marriage is so beautiful. It's beautiful for many reasons. I'm going to choose three things. We're going to look at three things today. Why marriage is beautiful, what it means to get married. Three different levels. The first one is a personal sort of spiritual connection between Nick and Julie. And they're going to express that through the vows that they've written for each other. The second is actually, and I did my research, this is a truly contractually binding thing we're doing here. Contractually binding. And they're still here. So, good. So I'll explain more about that when we get there. And finally, as I spoke to Nick and Julie, preparing for this day, I asked a lot of questions, we talked a lot about a lot of things. And one of the things I asked is, what role does God play in your life? And they immediately answered, God will play a big role in our lives and in our family. So the third very important thing is that God is here, and I assure you, He's here. And He is going to bless this marriage in the third very important level, third very important way. So we will begin on our first activity, which will be a reading from the Bible. It comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And I ask you to please listen carefully. I'll explain a little bit about this passage before I ask Bill to come up and read it, and then I'll maybe talk a little bit more about it after he reads it. It really is very deep, and it simply talks about love. You probably have heard it, but I invite you to listen to it in a different way today. So if I could ask Bill, come up.
This is from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Love. If I speak in tongues of mortals and angels, but have not love, I am only a ringing gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have absolute faith so as to move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and exalt in the surrender of my body, but have not love, I am nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not wicked. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no account of wrongs. Love takes no pleasure in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be restrained. Where there is knowledge, it will be dismissed. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial passes away. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I set aside my childish ways. Now we see but a dim reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully even as I am fully known. And now all of these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, the one thing I wanted to say regarding that passage is if you picture it in today's day and age, when you sort of peel away like an onion all the things that worry us every day, when you forget the cell phone or the computer or the TV, and we take it all apart, and you start going deeper and deeper, and you find what's at the core. That's what I think of when I think of that passage. Right? There's faith, there's hope, and you can even take those two. There's always love. Okay, and that's why we're here. So now, in all my research, everything I read, it says that the officiant is allowed a little bit of some time to talk. They call it a sermon sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to talk. Thank you for the opportunity. Now I'll refer back to this in a minute, but when Nick and Julie first called me and asked me to do this, they didn't really use the word efficient, right? So they just kind of asked me to do this, and I was so excited, I was so happy that I went around telling everyone how happy I was and how excited I was. Got it on Facebook, except I told everyone, in a few months I'm so excited I'm going to marry my niece. Those that didn't know my wife Carmen, we're still wondering, there's probably Florida laws. I mean, and those that didn't know that I'd been married for 23 years to Carmen were like, whatever. So anyway, I figured out that there's a word, and the word is efficient, and I'm so happy to be here and so honored that you asked me to do this. So thank you for that. I want to tell you now the very short, because you're going to think, oh my God, it's going to last forever, but this is a very short Nick and Julie love story. And it begins with Nick. And I remember a few years ago when Carlos and I called me and they said, we're going down there again. Oh, let's go, this is great. And we're bringing the girls. All right, this is great. And they're coming with their boyfriends. I said, whoa, hang on. What do you mean you're coming with boyfriends? Yeah, they're coming with the boyfriends. And I said, all right, I'm going to put together the ultimate sort of boyfriend rigor here, the boot camp. I'm going to see what we got here. I mean, and actually they come to the Keys a lot. The Keys are a great place to do this. There's a lot to do. There's safety concerns. It's a teamwork thing. You have to be, looking at others. And I really did do this. I was like, I'm going to keep an eye. They won't know, but I'm going to keep an eye. Every place I turned, everywhere I was, there was Nick trying to be helpful in one way or another. I'm not making this up. By the way, he told me, feel free to make anything up you want. He said, did you not say that? But I'm not making any of this up. He was there. He was, every which way. And I was like, how does he treat Julie? Is he being helpful? How does he treat others? Is he part of the team? And everywhere, even before I thought of it, he was always there. In fact, so much so that at one point I started turning my attention from, hey, is this guy worthy, to Julie, what do we do to keep this one? And I can't imagine. I couldn't imagine that we would be here today. So this is just absolute. How many jails? Because I told myself today, as I stared here and I saw you coming down the aisle, would I see a woman, a grown woman, a beautiful grown woman in her wedding gown? Or would I see the little baby that kind of talked to me, screamed my name, said Uncle Javi so many years ago, favored me? And I think I have an answer. I think I see the little girl. I think I always see the little girl. And I'm so happy for that. But I also see the beautiful woman. I think you know this. Everyone that knows you knows this. You're so full of happiness. You're so full of life. You care for everyone at every turn of the road. Since you were a baby, you were this way. And it's so wonderful to see you so happy. This that we're experiencing here is improbable in about a million different ways. If you indulge me in just one thing that's not exactly Nick and Julie, but it's about their heritage. Carlos and I grew up together in Cuba, right? And we lived a block apart. We were inseparable. People use that word, but trust me, we were inseparable. Every time we could spend together, we were hanging out together. I looked up to him very much then, and I look up to him now. Not physically, you know, but, you know, he's a little older. We knew we'd be together in the United States, we knew we'd come to the United States, but we never knew as kids that we could possibly move to two exactly most opposite cities you could possibly be in the United States, right? So 3,000 miles apart, one block, 3,000 miles. And so for a while there, we thought we'd never really hang out again, right? In fact, this is absolutely true, I was telling my wife Carmen, the only trip my family and I ever took on an airplane, right, was to Seattle. We weren't very well off growing up, and the money we scraped together to travel somewhere, immediately we knew where we were coming to Seattle. And when we came to Seattle, I remember we had so much fun. I remember we used to teach, and I'm going somewhere with this because this is important. We used to do all kinds of great things, and I'm not sure if I remember. And one of the things we did is that we'd walk into public places like restaurants and things like that, and we'd start speaking Spanish, right? And we just start saying like bad words, and we'd talk about people, and it was like so fun to do this. Right? Wow, this is so cool. We can do this. No one understands the word we're saying, right? And then I thought, when the girls were growing up, I want to teach them that. I want to have them learn Spanish so that they have this power. Right? And yeah, it was kind of mean. Right? We would say kind of bad things or whatever. But that was cool. So I kind of got the girls into it, and I thought, okay, when I teach them Spanish, I got some pushback. But then I said, okay, we'll start one word at a time. One word. You remember the word? That was the one word I was able to teach them. She's a Spanish teacher now, for God's sake. I mean, how improbable are these things? So if I break into Spanish for a second, I'm going to read this right out of here because I don't want to mess it up. It's very simple. All right. Eres lo más bello que yo he visto en mi vida. Tu belleza dentro y fuera brilla como la luna. Estoy muy orgulloso de los dos y los quiero mucho. Translation, are there or are there not a lot of funny looking people here? Alright, so on to the relationship. We're getting there. Okay, so on to the relationship. How did this happen? Momo, front and center. Okay? Momo decides, and a lot of us know Momo, you're about to know her this right now, because Momo decided, hey, I've known Julie since the 5th grade. She's wonderful, she's great. I've just met Nick. He's wonderful, he's great. They're both wonderful and great in about the same ways. So she decides, we've got to make this happen. And she calls Julie while Julie's actually in Florida and tells her, you got to meet this guy. He's like, yeah. I mean, by the way, and most of you know this, they've grown up together, across the street from each other, right? But weren't thinking in this way. Momo was not taking no for an answer. I'm a big fan of your work. And she decides, okay, I'm going to bring Julie over, and she does. And then while Julie's at the house, she calls Nick over and says, you got to come over. And then she sees this happening, and they start talking, and you could just hear her as she walks away, mumbling under her breath, my work here is done. It's not quite done. But we're working on it. Give me a few minutes. Anyway, they start hitting it off. They start talking. Everything seems to be going just fine. But this is a movie, right? You can't have just all goodness in a movie. There has to be the moment, right? Absolutely everybody was against this union. This was not a good thing. Nick is going away to college. Julie is in high school still. You know, Nick's parents said, you don't need a serious relationship. You don't need it. What's this guy going to do? He's going to college. The dogs in the family are not liking this. I mean, it's just bad all around. And there comes a moment when there is I asked them both when we were talking, I said, is there anything kind of, was there a bump in the road at any point? I didn't even finish that question. Nick said, no. Never a bump in the road, never anything wrong, nothing. And then, I've learned to spot fake news. And I asked, wait a minute, what happened here? There was a conversation that was had where Nick used some words that, to the end, when Julie said, what are we? What is this? And I'm not going to say it. Let's just say his answer was unsatisfactory. But it took very little while before they just knew, right? Very little while. They came together, and there was the mother of all conversations in the cul-de-sac shortly after that, and they just knew they were going to be together, and everything starts coming together, and they decide they can't be apart, and here we are 7 years later. Can you believe it? All right. Wow, that's tough to follow. Okay, so that, all right, so that completes the first part. And yeah, what a part. This second part is the legally binding part, okay? So, let me be clear. The correct answer here is I do. Because it's going well so far. All right. Do you, Nick Rosenden, take Julie Leyva as your lawfully wedded wife to have and to hold in sickness and in health until death do you part? And do you, Julie Leyva, take Nick Rosenden as your lawfully wedded husband to have and to hold in sickness and in health until death do you part? This is so working according to plan. All right, and now the final part, or not the final part, but the third theme of this, right? I mentioned the God part. And it's interesting in what I've just read that it says until death do you part. And it's true. The contractually, legally binding business ends at death. Okay? This part doesn't. This part doesn't. So I'm going to invite you to think of the God that you believe in, he, she, it, what you believe in, and what you trust when you're kind of go through some tough times. And I'm going to ask you to join me in prayer. I'm going to ask your permission. I'm going to pray in a way I was taught many years ago in Cuba by a small community of Christians who kind of risked a lot, right, against an oppressive regime that didn't let them practice their faith, but they defended it, and they taught it to us. They taught it to Carlos and to me. Among the leaders of that community are my parents, Gladys and Ode, and my second parents here, Armando and Alina. So, if I can keep it together, and ask you to bow your heads in prayer. Padre nuestro que estás en el cielo, santificado sea tu nombre. Venga tu reino, hágase tu voluntad en la tierra así como en el cielo. Danos hoy nuestro pan de cada día, y perdona nuestras ofensas, como también nosotros perdonamos a los que nos ofenden. No nos dejes caer en tentación, y líbranos del mal. Dios te salve María. Dios te salve María. Help me. Llena eres de gracia. El Señor está contigo. Bendita tú eres entre todas las mujeres, y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre Jesús. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amén. Gloria sea al Padre, y al Hijo, y al Espíritu Santo, como seas antes, como fue, como es ahora, y como será siempre, por los siglos de los siglos. Amén. All right. Wow, that was tough. Thank you. Okay, so those are the three things that are about as official as they get. So we're getting just to the end. Thank you for sticking with us. We now, if I could ask Mr. Dalton, please, for the rings. All right. All right. Hang on 1 second while I find them. Okay, so you could repeat after me. With this ring, I take you now and for the rest of time. Okay. With this ring, I take you now and for the rest of time. By the way, the ring is a sign of the fidelity for both of them. Notice it's a circular. It also shows that there is no beginning, there is no end, there's always them, there's always one. So, there's a couple of things that are left, but they're only the sort of the pronouncements and presentations, right? I want to repeat how wonderful and how honored I am to be here, and I want to repeat thank you to all of you for sharing this moment with them. And now, as family and friends and this beautiful Pacific Northwest city of Seattle, stand as witness to this union with all the joy in my heart that I can possibly muster for this beautiful couple. And by the power vested in me by the state of Washington, I pronounce you husband and wife. So I'm going to ask you guys to come back here 1 second. Come on. All right. All right. All right. We're good.
1, 2.
One more time. Awesome. Okay. Good. All right, almost there. Almost there. Okay. All right. You ready? You ready? Okay. There's only 2 words I know in Hawaiian. It's aloha and pahana. So we're about to go pahana now. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys to please turn to your family and friends. Let me say that it is my distinct honor and awesome privilege to present to you, for the very first time ever, Mr. and Mrs. Rosenberg.